What if someone actually cracked it? What if, buried in a government filing cabinet, there exists a patent that could have ended the world's addiction to oil decades ago? And what if the reason you've never heard of it is because the most powerful industry on the planet made absolutely sure you wouldn't? That's not a hypothetical. That's a documented pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. In 2023, the 5 largest oil companies on Earth combined for over $190 billion in profit in a single year. So ask yourself, what would those companies do if a patent showed up that made their entire product unnecessary? What would you do with that kind of money and that kind of power? The answer is not sit quietly and let progress happen. The year is 1975. The world is still rattled from the 1973 OPEC oil embargo, which caused gas prices to explode overnight and sent entire economies into chaos. People are furious. Governments are scrambling. And in this exact climate, a Canadian inventor named Charles Nelson Pogue had been quietly sitting on something extraordinary for decades. Pogue filed patents in 1930 and 1935 for a high-efficiency carburetor. His design allegedly vaporized gasoline so completely before combustion that test results documented by independent mechanics in Winnipeg showed vehicles achieving somewhere between 200 and 300 miles per gallon. Not 30, not 50. Try 200 to 300. Multiple witnesses, including a Canadian government transportation official, claimed they personally rode in and tested vehicles equipped with the Pogue carburetor. The documentation exists. And then, almost overnight, the device vanished. No mass production, no follow-up testing, no news coverage, just silence. What exactly happened? That question still doesn't have a clean answer. And Pogue wasn't the last inventor to discover what happens when you threaten the wrong industry. If Pogue's story is unsettling, Stanley Meyer's is outright disturbing. Meyer was an Ohio-based inventor who, throughout the 1970s and 1980s, claimed to have built a water fuel cell. His device allegedly split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen, using far less energy than standard electrolysis requires, then burned the gas to power an engine. He was claiming to run a car on water. He didn't just say it. He demonstrated it publicly. U.S. patent 4,936,961 was granted to Meyer in 1990. That is a real, verified document in the United States. Patent and Trademark Office database right now. You can look it up yourself. He reportedly rejected a NATO-linked contract worth over $1 billion, saying he didn't want the technology weaponized or buried. In 1996, a British court ruled against him in a fraud case. Then in 1998, Meyer collapsed outside a restaurant in Ohio. 2 Belgian investors who had been meeting with him claimed he stepped outside after a sip of cranberry juice, said the words, "They poisoned me," and died shortly after. The official cause was a brain aneurysm. He was 57. His lab was cleared out. His research disappeared. No foul play was ever officially established. But the pattern here is starting to look very familiar. By 1900, electric vehicles actually outsold gasoline-powered cars in the United States. Over 38% of American automobiles in 1900 were electric. Within 2 decades, they were essentially gone. The oil industry's investment in infrastructure, lobbying, and strategic acquisition of competitors ensured internal combustion dominated the entire 20th century. That wasn't an accident. That was coordinated. Then there's Thomas Henry Murray, who in 1917 claimed to have built a device that drew energy from ambient radiation and powered a home. He demonstrated it for dozens of witnesses, including government officials. He applied for patents repeatedly and was denied every time. His lab was broken into. He was shot at. During one demonstration, a visitor literally destroyed the device before anyone could stop him. Morey spent years trying to rebuild it. He never fully succeeded. His work was dismissed. His story disappeared. Sound familiar? In 1996, General Motors released the EV1, the first mass-produced electric vehicle from a major American automaker. The people who leased it, because GM only offered leases and never sales, absolutely loved it. Waiting lists grew. Advocacy groups formed. Drivers begged to buy the cars outright. GM said no. And then in 2002 and 2003, GM began repossessing every single EV1 in existence. Owners showed up to find their cars gone. They offered to buy them. They staged protests in parking lots. GM crushed the cars anyway, literally. Nearly every EV1 was taken to a lot in Arizona and destroyed. The official reason was insufficient consumer demand, while those same consumers were standing in a parking lot, begging to keep the cars. Here's what seals it. California's zero-emission vehicle mandate, the law that had essentially forced GM to build the EV1 in the first place, was quietly gutted around the exact same time. The cars were being crushed after intense lobbying from automakers and oil companies. The documentary, Who Killed the Electric Car, documented all of this in 2006. The evidence was never hidden. It just wasn't supposed to matter to you. The answer isn't some dramatic secret cabal. It's actually more mundane, and in some ways that's worse. The global oil and gas industry represents roughly $5 trillion in annual economic activity. When a technology threatens all of that simultaneously, the response is coordinated, patient, and well-funded. Patent acquisition is one real documented method. A major corporation buys the rights to a technology not to develop it, but to shelve it. Pharmaceutical companies have been caught doing this with competing drugs. Tech companies do it to startups that threaten their core products. There is even a name for it, a defensive patent acquisition. Then there is regulatory capture. The agencies meant to oversee an industry get staffed by people who came from that industry. And finally, there is credibility destruction. Label an inventor a crank before anyone investigates the science, and you never have to engage with the evidence at all. Buy it. Regulate it to death. Bury the inventor's reputation. That 3-part playbook has been running for over a century, and it works. The specific filing involved vapor-based fuel delivery systems, designs claiming to extract dramatically more energy from the same gasoline by vaporizing it before ignition, rather than spraying it as liquid. This isn't fantasy science. Gasoline in vapor form burns more completely than liquid droplets. More complete combustion means more energy extracted and less wasted as heat. What was controversial was the degree of improvement claimed, and those claims never received serious independent testing. Here is the number that should stop you cold. Modern internal combustion engines still only convert roughly 20 to 40% of the energy in gasoline into actual motion. After more than a century of engineering, that figure has barely moved. Could a vapor fuel system have pushed it significantly higher? Possibly. Did those patents ever receive the serious independent research needed to find out? No. And the reason they didn't is the most infuriating part of the whole story. Testing costs money. Developing technology costs more. And the people who had the money had every reason not to spend it, finding out if these things worked. So the patent faded into the archive, gathering dust, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. And here you are, asking them. Not every suppressed inventor had a working device. Not every vanished patent was buried by corporate interests. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But the EV1 was real. The crushing of the EV1 was real. The lobbying that killed California's zero-emission mandate was real. The Pobe patents are real documents. Meyer's patent is a real filing. Defensive patent acquisitions are a common, documented business practice. The revolving door between oil companies and their regulators is a verifiable fact. The question was never whether suppression happens. It clearly does. The question is what it has cost us in lost decades of innovation, in compounding environmental damage, in every dollar you have ever spent at a gas pump. That question deserves a lot more than 18 months in a filing cabinet. If this is the kind of history you want, the stuff they hoped you'd forget, drop a comment and tell me which suppressed technology you want us to cover next. Hit the like button, subscribe to Yesterday's Secret, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, this story is far from over.